Good day, Ma'am Amarga, and good day, classmates. So we are the sixth group, and we will be representing our topic for today. So for today's report, we will be discussing the topic entitled Tejeros Assembly. Today, we will discuss one of the most controversial parts of our history, kung paano umabot sa punto na kung saan ang Pilipino at Kapwa Pilipino ang naglaban. Let's start with a quotation from Michael Crichton. If you don't know history, then you don't know anything. So what is Tejeros Assembly? The Tejeros Assembly, also known as the Tejeros Convention, is the meeting of the two rebel parties of the Filipino Revolution, which are the Magdiwang Party and the Magdalo Party, that took place on March 22, 1897 at the Casa Hacienda of Tejeros, a town of San Francisco de Malabon. Now this town is called General Trias, Cavite. The purpose of the Tejeros Assembly is to develop a plan and action to strengthen the defense in Cavite. However, instead of discussing the said reason for the meeting, the leaders of the Katipunan decided to establish a new revolutionary government in the place of the Katipunan and elect officials for it. So the main purpose of this convention is to reconcile the differences between the two factions of the Katipunan, the Magdalo and the Magdiwang, to discuss what the revolutionary government would be like and to determine the leaders of the said government.
What happened at the Tejeros conventions? The revolutionary leaders called the conventions in a friar estate residence in Tejeros, unsensible to discuss the defense of Cavite against the Spaniards during the Philippines Revolution. Instead of focusing on the defense of the province, the conventions became an elections to decide the leaders of the revolutionary movement to settle once and for all the issues of governance within Katipunan and of the revolutionary effort. The cause of the escalating tensions between the existing Supreme Council of the Katipunan, as represented by Andres Bonifacio, who have been invited to Cavite months earlier to mediate and had taken the side of the Magdiwang, while Bonifacio and his allies within Magdiwang maintained that the Katipunan was already sufficient as their government, and the Magdalo people and their own sympathizers within Magdiwang maintained the need to establish a new government, so that result in the creation of a new revolutionary government that took charge of the Philippine revolutions, replacing the Katipunan. It followed on a previous meeting known as Imus Assembly. Filipino historians consider the first presidential and vice presidential elections in the Philippine history to have been held at these conventions, although only Katipuneros, members of the Katipunan, were able to take part, and not the general populace. The Tejeros Conventions was held in order to reconcile the difference between the two functions of the Katipunan. The Magdalo, which view Emilio Aguinaldo as its leader, and the Magdiwang, which gravitated towards Andres Bonifacio.
Amidst questioning on whether the Katipunan, which already operated as an alternative revolutionary government, was more like a democracy or monarchy, Bonifacio defended that it was a republican and democratic in nature. According to him, they were all united against the King of Spain to have their own free and sovereign government, and that all Katipunan members of any given ranks were meant to serve under the principle of liberty, equality, and fraternity, upon which republicanism was founded, and their government stood for the sovereignty of the people, not only one or two persons. Most of the day was spent in debates, and a tumult broke out after the Magdalo side called the statu quo of revolutionary no better than that of bandits or wild animals, which the Magdiwang of Bonifacio sides took offense to. After order was restored, some pushed for the convention to be adjourned, but Bonifacio prevailed upon them to continue. Jacinto Lumbreras of Magdiwang, who had served as a chairman of assembly and presided over the proceeding to that point, then refused to continue as a chairman since if they were to discuss replacing the Katipunan, then Bonifacio should preside as father of Katipunan and the revolution. Bonifacio was thus made chairman, despite his concern about the lack of official and representative from the other province and the other Katipunan council. He bowed to the will of the majority and was obliged to proceed with the election. So the Katipunan was already a revolutionary government, and Bonifacio is trying to defend the democratic in nature.
And this is the election results. Emilio Aguinaldo became president, Mariano Trias vice president, Artemio Ricardo captain general, Emiliano Rigo de Dios director of war, Andres Bonifacio director of interior. Bonifacio presided over the election as chairman of the convention. He secured the unanimous approval of the assembly that the decision would not be questioned and the winners be respected regardless of their station in life or educational attainment. However, after Bonifacio was elected, Daniel Terona loudly objected that the post should not be occupied by a person without a lawyer's diploma. He instead nominated a lawyer, Jose del Rosario of Magdiwang, as qualified for suitable position. Bonifacio was greatly embarrassed and demanded that Terona retract the remark and apologize to the assembly. When Terona made to leave instead, Bonifacio drew a pistol and was about to fire at Terona, but stopped when Ricarte tried to disarm him. Bonifacio then invoked his rule as the chairman of the assembly and the supreme president of the Katipunan, and declared all proceeding that day to be null and void, and left with his supporters. Several complaints against Bonifacio, notably from the Severano de las Alas and Jose Coronel, were then presented to Aguinaldo. He then ordered Bonifacio's arrest before he could leave Cavite and dispatched a force to Bonifacio's camp at Limbon, Indang. The unsuspecting Bonifacio received him cordially on the 25th, but was arrested along with his brother Procopio early the next day. In the resulting exchange of gunfire and scuffles, despite Bonifacio ordering his men not to fight and not putting up resistance himself, he was wounded and his other sibling Ciriaco was killed. Andres and Procopio Bonifacio were tried on charges of treason by members of the War Council of Aguinaldo's government. On May 10, 1897, the brothers were executed. And that would be all. Thank you for listening, everyone, and God bless.